Think you know the whole story? Turns out you were probably taught the half-truth. Welcome to Half-Truths. Picture a nature documentary. You know the one. The camera pans across the dry, sun-baked savanna. The music is tense, a low thrum of strings building in the background. In slow motion, a lioness ripples with muscle, her eyes locked on a terrified gazelle. The chase begins. Dust flies, claws extend. It is violent, it is AWE-inspiring, and it feels like the fundamental truth of the world. The narrator, with a voice like gravel and honey, reminds us that this is the law of the jungle. The weak perish, the strong survive. We absorb this message before we are old enough to understand biology. We hear it on the playground when the biggest kid gets the ball. We hear it in the boardroom when the ruthless CEO acquires a competitor. We hear it in the gym, etched onto the back of a cut-off t-shirt. Survival of the fittest. It is a phrase that has become a philosophy. It suggests that life is a zero-sum game, a gladiatorial arena where compassion is a weakness and aggression is a virtue. We believe that evolution is a ladder, and at the top stands the ultimate predator, the alpha, the conqueror, the beast that can bench press the weight of the world and tear its enemies to shreds. We look at the history of life on Earth and we see a blood sport. But what if that story is wrong? What if the phrase we use to describe the mechanism of life doesn't mean what we think it means? What if the most successful creatures on Earth aren't the ones with the sharpest teeth or the biggest muscles, but the ones who learned to be friendly? What if the true champions of evolution are the cooperative, the adaptable, and sometimes the incredibly lazy? Welcome to Half-Truths. I am your host, and today we are going to perform a little evolutionary surgery. We are going to take a scalpel to one of the most pervasive myths in history. We are going to find out why the guy who coined the phrase survival of the fittest wasn't a biologist at all, but a political theorist with an agenda. And we are going to discover that in the grand game of life, finishing first often means being the nice guy. Let's start with the story we all know, the version of evolution that lives in our collective pop culture consciousness. If I asked you to draw an evolutionary winner, you would probably draw a Trex, a massive, terrifying creature designed for dominance. We view evolution as an arms race. The antelope gets faster, so the cheetah gets faster. The bacteria gets stronger, so the antibiotic gets stronger. It is a constant, escalating war for supremacy. This view of nature appeals to us because it mirrors the way we have structured our own societies, particularly in the West. We love a winner. We love the narrative of the self-made man who clawed his way to the top. We justify massive wealth inequality or ruthless business tactics by shrugging our shoulders and pointing out the window at the birds and the bees. It is just nature, we say. It is the natural order of things. We have internalized the idea that fitness equals physical dominance. If you are fit, you are athletic. You are strong. You have endurance. So when we hear survival of the fittest, we linguistically map that definition onto biology. We assume that Mother Nature loves a bodybuilder. We assume that the history of life is a history of violence, where the only way to secure your legacy is to beat everyone else into submission. This is the half-truth. Yes, competition exists in nature. Yes, predators hunt prey. But framing the entire history of 4 billion years of life as a cage match is not just a simplification. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what Darwin was actually talking about. To understand how we got this so wrong, we have to pull the thread. And that thread leads us back not to the Galapagos Islands, but to the smoke-choked streets of Victorian England. Here is the first crack in the myth. Charles Darwin, the father of evolutionary theory, did not coin the phrase survival of the fittest. It does not appear in the first 4 editions of his groundbreaking work on the origin of species. Darwin preferred a much less catchy, much more descriptive term, natural selection. So, who gave us the slogan that would define a century of misunderstanding? It was a man named Herbert Spencer. Spencer was not a biologist who spent years studying finches or barnacles. He was a philosopher, an economist, and a sociologist. He was a man deeply invested in the political and economic systems of the 19th century. When Spencer read Darwin's work in 1859, he saw something that confirmed his own worldview. Spencer was a massive proponent of laissez-faire capitalism. He believed that the government should not interfere in the economy or in the lives of the poor. He believed that society was improving because the strong and capable were rising to the top, while the weak and incompetent were naturally filtering out. In 1864, Spencer wrote a book called Principles of Biology. In it, he drew a parallel between his economic theories and Darwin's biological ones. He wrote, "This survival of the fittest, which I have here sought to express in mechanical terms, is that which Mr. Darwin has called natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life." Spencer wasn't trying to explain how a moth changes color. He was trying to justify a social hierarchy. He was projecting his own political beliefs onto the natural world. By coining this phrase, he gave a scientific veneer to a very specific, very cruel political ideology. This eventually metastasized into what we call social Darwinism, a dark chapter in history used to justify colonialism, eugenics, and the neglect of the vulnerable. Darwin eventually adopted the phrase in his 5th edition, largely because his editor suggested it might be clearer than natural selection. But Darwin meant it differently, and this is where the linguistic trap snaps shut. In the mid-19th century, the word fit didn't primarily mean athletic or muscular. It meant fitting, appropriate, suited to the circumstances. Think of a puzzle piece. A puzzle piece is fit if it matches the shape of the hole it needs to fill. It doesn't matter if that puzzle piece is made of steel or wet cardboard. If it fits the hole, it works. If you have a giant diamond-hard puzzle piece that is the wrong shape, it is not fit. It is useless. This is the pivot point. This is where the record scratches. When scientists say survival of the fittest, they do not mean survival of the strongest. They mean survival of the best fitted. Let's look at the real story, the biological reality. In evolutionary terms, fitness has a very specific, very mathematical definition. It is simply the ability of an organism to survive and reproduce in a specific environment. That is it. You could be the strongest, fastest lion on the savannah, but if you are sterile, your evolutionary fitness is 0. You are a genetic dead end. Conversely, you could be a tiny, fragile, slow-moving insect, but if you manage to lay 10,000 eggs that all hatch and survive, you are an evolutionary grandmaster. Nature does not care about bench press stats. Nature cares about context. Let's look at a creature that completely defies the gym bro definition of fitness, the sloth. If survival of the fittest meant survival of the strongest, the sloth should have gone extinct millions of years ago. It is slow, it is weak, it has terrible eyesight. It moves so infrequently that algae grows on its fur. It literally looks like a walking buffet for any predator with a pulse. But the sloth is incredibly successful. Why? Because it found a niche. It fits into its environment perfectly. By moving slowly, it conserves a massive amount of energy, which means it doesn't need to hunt or scramble for high-calorie food. It can survive on leaves that provide almost no nutrition, a food source that no one else wants. Its slow movement makes it almost invisible to predators like jaguars, whose eyes are trained to detect rapid motion. The sloth isn't winning by fighting. It is winning by opting out of the race entirely. It is the ultimate puzzle piece for a low-energy, high-canopy sloth. Now, let's talk about the most powerful weapon in the evolutionary arsenal. It isn't claws. It isn't venom. It is friendship. There is a fascinating concept gaining traction in biology called survival of the friendliest. This theory suggests that for many species, specifically the ones that have thrived the most, cooperation was the killer app. Look at the wolf and the dog. About 20,000 years ago, the ancestor of the gray wolf was a fearsome predator. But a subset of those wolves began to behave differently. Instead of competing with humans for food or trying to attack them, these wolves realized there was a different strategy. If they were less aggressive, if they were more tolerant of human presence, they could access a new, reliable food source: our scraps. The wolves that were the friendliest, the ones with the lowest levels of the stress hormone cortisol, were the ones that could get close enough to the campfire to eat. They survived. They reproduced. Over generations, this selection for friendliness changed their bodies. Their snouts got shorter. Their ears became floppy. They developed the ability to make eye contact with us and understand our gestures. Today, there are roughly 300,000 wild wolves left in the world. They are struggling. Their habitat is shrinking. Meanwhile, there are nearly 1 billion dogs. By any biological metric, the friendly dog has absolutely crushed the aggressive wolf in the game of evolution. They didn't survive by being stronger. They survived by being cute, cooperative, and useful to a partner species. They hacked the system by being nice. This trend appears everywhere. Biologist Lynn Margulis revolutionized our understanding of life when she proposed that complex cells, the very building blocks of your body, didn't evolve through competition, but through cooperation. Billions of years ago, one simple bacterium swallowed another. Instead of digesting it, they formed a partnership. The swallowed bacteria became the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Every single breath you take is powered by an ancient act of cooperation between two microorganisms. If nature was purely a war of all against all, life would never have gotten past the single-cell stage. To build a body, cells have to cooperate. To build a hive, bees have to cooperate. To build a civilization, humans have to cooperate. And that brings us to the human animal. We are the ultimate refutation of the survival of the strongest myth. Look at us. Physically, we are embarrassing. We have no claws. We have no fur to keep us warm. We cannot outrun a leopard. We cannot outwrestle a chimp. Our babies are born helpless and stay that way for years. If you dropped a naked human into the wilderness alone, their survival fitness would be incredibly low. So how did we take over the planet? We capitalized on social connection. Our superpower is our ability to communicate, to share knowledge, to build tribes, and to care for one another. Early humans who were selfish, who hoarded food, who tried to dominate the group through pure aggression, were often ostracized or killed by the collective. The humans who shared, who protected the weak, who worked together to bring down a mammoth, were the ones who passed on their genes. Our fitness is found in our ability to be unfit in the traditional sense. We care for our injured. We feed our elderly. In a Spencerian world, a human with a broken leg is dead weight. In the real world, a human with a broken leg can heal because their tribe brings them food. And once healed, that human might be the one who knows how to find water during a drought, saving the entire group. Our compassion is not a deviation from nature. It is our most potent survival strategy. We also see this in the concept of sexual selection, which throws a wrench into the idea of pure utilitarian strength. Look at the peacock. The male peacock's tail is heavy. It is bright. It makes it hard to fly and easy to be seen by tigers. It is, purely from a survival standpoint, a terrible idea. But the peahens love it. It signals genetic quality not because it makes the bird a better fighter, but because it shows he has energy to burn. It is a display of excess. Evolution is not just about the grim struggle to not die. It is about the flamboyant, sometimes ridiculous struggle to impress. The fittest bird here is the one with the most beautiful, impractical accessories. When we strip away the 19th century political spin, we see a natural world that is far more creative and diverse than a simple hierarchy of strength. We see the fitness of the mimetic octopus, which survives by shapeshifting. We see the fitness of the monarch butterfly, which survives by tasting terrible. We see the fitness of the cleaner fish, which swims into the mouth of a shark to eat parasites, confident that the shark won't bite because the shark needs a dentist. We need to rethink the word fit. It is not a static measurement. It is not a high score on a strength test. It is a dynamic, fluid relationship between an organism and its surroundings. If the environment changes, what is considered fit changes instantly. The dinosaurs were the masters of the earth for millions of years. They were huge, strong, and dominant. They were incredibly fit for the Cretaceous period. But when that asteroid hit, the environment changed in a heartbeat. Suddenly, being huge and needing tons of food was a death sentence. The very traits that made them fit became their downfall. Who survived the apocalypse? The small, scurrying, furry ancestors of mammals. Creatures that could hide in burrows, eat anything, and regulate their own body temperature. In the new, cold, dark world, the meek inherited the earth. The definition of fitness flipped upside down. The heavyweights were out, the scrappy generalists were in. This reveals the danger of our modern obsession with the strongman version of history. When we view life through the lens of Herbert Spencer, we convince ourselves that vulnerability is a sin. We tell ourselves that we must be hard, unyielding, and self-reliant to survive. We build corporate cultures and school systems based on a misunderstood biology, rewarding the bully and ignoring the collaborator. But the fossil record tells a different story. The fossil record is a graveyard of bullies. The species that try to dominate everything often burn out. They overeat their resources. They become too specialized. They lack the flexibility to handle change. The long game of evolution favors the flexible. It favors the connectors. It favors those who can find a way to fit into the puzzle, even if the picture on the box keeps changing. So, let's summarize the journey we have taken. We started with the image of the lion and the gazelle. The belief that nature is a simple contest of brute strength. We learned that this idea was popularized not by Darwin, but by Herbert Spencer, a man trying to justify ruthless capitalism. We pulled the thread to reveal that fitness in biology just means reproductive success and environmental adaptability. We looked at the sloth, the dog, and the human, finding that laziness, friendliness, and cooperation are often superior strategies to aggression. We realized that being fit is about fitting in, not standing over a defeated opponent. Why does this correction matter? Why should we care if a Victorian economist got a little confused about biology? It matters because the stories we tell about our origins shape where we think we are going. If we believe we are hardwired for war and dominance, we will create a world that reflects that. We will justify cruelty as inevitable. We will look at the poor and the struggling and say, well, they just aren't fit enough. But if we understand the real story, we see that our greatest strengths are our empathy, our ability to work together, and our capacity to adapt. We realize that the law of the jungle includes the law of the pack, the law of the herd, and the law of the symbiotic partnership. Nature is not a coliseum. It is a vast, tangled web. And in a web, you don't survive by tearing the strands apart. You survive by holding them together. The next time you hear someone say survival of the fittest to justify stepping on someone else to get ahead, remember the wolf and the dog. The wolf is endangered. The dog is sleeping on the couch. You tell me which one won. Now you know the real story. What other half-truths are still out there? If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, and join us next time. Until then, stay curious.